Hey everyone, Andy Sykes here, and today we're going through a first ride impressions of a prototype bike that won't go on sale until 2023. That's right, I have ridden Cotic's prototype electric mountain bike. In fact, I rode it last month after delivering the Cotic Rocket Mullet bike back to them after having a review. I'd actually seen the Cotic e-bike lurking in the corner while chatting to Sai while interviewing him, and I really wanted to get a couple of spy shots, but Sai and I agreed that I would come back at a later date and take the Cotic prototype e-bike for a spin on their local trails, and that's what I've done. Now, this is not a full in-depth review. There's no point in doing that. This bike is still in development. And the chances are, what we see today, what I've ridden already, might change by the time it goes on sale. But it does give you a first insight and first idea of what this DropLink electric mountain bike might feel like once you get to ride it. Now, the elephant in the room is this is not a steel bike. Cotic is known for steel bikes. The Beefy Max, the Rocket Max, the Flare, the Soul, they're all steel bikes. And this is aluminium. And to be honest, that makes a lot of sense. Cotic could have made a slender steel tubed mountain bike and then bolted on a massive battery and motor, but would it have looked good? No, it wouldn't. So aluminium actually makes a lot of sense for the prototype e-bike, and it means that they're able to stuff in that massive 630 watt-hour battery in the down tube. Now, this is not the first time that Cotic have made an aluminium bike. If you look back over the years, they actually had a full suspension bike called the Hemlock. So this isn't Cotic doing something out of the box and totally new for them. It's just them revisiting a material that they don't often use. In actual fact, the Cotic Rocket Max DropLink bikes, they do have an aluminium element to them. Each one has an alloy chainstay. In this case, the entire bike is aluminium except the seat stay, which is steel. So they've kept a little bit of steel is real vibe to this bike. Now, the Cotic prototype, like I say, is not a fully developed bike. The geometry is likely to change. Maybe the look is likely to change. Maybe even the kinematics. But as it is, this bike is based around the Jet. So it has 140 millimeters of travel on the rear and 150 millimeters of travel on the front. And I've seen the bike built up as both a 29er front and rear and a mullet. And in my chance, when I rode the bike, I rode it on a size large bike with a mullet configuration, meaning a 27.5-inch reel on the rear. Now, Cotic have used a Shimano motor system. They've got the EP8 motor mounted into the frame with a 630 watt-hour battery in the down tube, and that means you've got plenty of torque. You've got 85 newton meters of torque, so it should be really good for climbing. Well, it is really good for climbing, I know, because I've ridden it. And you've got plenty of range. Now, what I tend to do with big power e-bikes, full power e-bikes, or full fat e-bikes, whatever you want to call them, is I tend to run them in eco pretty much all the time. And that was the same with Cotic's bike. I ran it in eco for climbing, put it into trail now and again, because to be honest, the efficiency of that DropLink suspension is so good. You really do climb very, very quickly on this bike. So I was tempted to whack it into trail and boost now and again on the climbs to see how fast it goes. And to be honest, I was absolutely blown away. Now, a few of you guys, if you've ridden different types of electric mountain bike, running Shimano motors or Bosch motors, you may already have a kind of preference towards Bosch because it does have that better efficiency. It gets the power down better. It's a bit easier to keep the power down in slippy situations. But I've got to say that the kinematic and the geometry of the Cotic e-bike is very, very good. And even with that Shimano motor, it's very efficient. It gets the power down. I don't know if it's anything to do with the kinematics. I don't know if they've tuned the motor in any way. It could simply be because it had a much thicker 27.5-inch tire on the rear, giving me a bit more traction on those slippy rocks. But whatever it is, the Cotic e-bike climbs really, really well. Now, as I've already mentioned, I'm not too sure on the geometry, but I do know it's loosely based on the Jet. It's not quite as steep in the seat tube angle as the Cotic Rocket Max mullet that I tested. But when I got on the bike, it did feel pretty good. And I think that was down to the fact that the saddle was really far forward on its rails and the front of the nose was angled down a little bit. And I tend to ride my bikes like anyway. So the efficient, comfortable climbing, seated position is there. But it's an e-bike. You don't need to worry about that so much. What's really impressive though is the geometry of the bike gives you a stretched out and comfortable feel, but not too stretched out. You don't feel like the bike is taking you for a ride. You can actually ride this bike and chuck it around. It's not a lightweight bike. As you can see, it's got a massive battery, it's got a big chunky aluminium frame, and like all Cotic bikes, this thing is built to last. There's nothing lightweight on it. It's got alloy wheels, it's got chunky tires, it's got Helm suspension, Cane Creek suspension in front and rear. There's no carbon fiber on it at all. It's built to last. It's not particularly heavy. I have no idea how much it weighs because I didn't weigh it, but it's still a really playful bike, and I put that down to the long shot geometry which Sai has absolutely nailed, plus the kinematics of the drop link suspension. It's a very progressive and playful ride. With just 140 millimeters of travel on the back, you're not wallowing through a monster amount of travel. You've got just enough to get you out of trouble as you pick up speed. But it also means that it's really easy to pick the bike up and hop over things on the trail. Now, when climbing, this is great because you're not bobbing around. You're able to manhandle the bike over obstacles as you climb. And with that motor and battery, you can really power through some really techie sections. The back wheel sits on the ground really, really well, and the suspension does a good job of keeping the traction down. Once you get to the top of the trail though, and you come back down again, man, this bike absolutely comes alive. It's absolutely bonkers. Now, considering this was my first ever ride on this bike, and it was on a bike with tires that I'm not too familiar with, the suspension wasn't perfectly set up for me, but to be honest, the Cane Creek stuff is pretty good. Like, if you can get it close, it feels pretty awesome. And it was on trails that I don't really ride, and it was super, super slippy, so I was a little bit cautious on my first few rides. But to be honest, really, the geometry is so confidence inspiring. I was smashing the downhill pretty quickly right off the bat. Now, another thing that I was lucky to do on the Cotic Cotic e-bike prototype was to play around on a few jumps. Now, Cotic had given me a map, so I couldn't come with me because he'd damaged his bike. But he gave me a map and he said, okay, you can go for this route here, or you could go up the techier route. And if you're going to do it on an e-bike, climb up the downhill and come down the downhill. And that's what I did. But at the top of the downhill, which is, you know, the uphill for me, there's a jump section at the top. So there's some jumps, there's some turns, there's a little lily pad section, there's a drop-offs, there's a couple of berms. And this was really good to play around in. There's nothing massive up there. It was all quite small and fun. But considering that this is a heavy bike, it was really, really lively and so eager to jump around. It was so much fun. And because you are on an e-bike, you can session these little sections over and over and over again. In fact, on my first ride, I climbed up once, spent about 40 minutes just playing around on the jumps because it was so much fun, and got just a couple of descents in. It was really, really good. And that shows how versatile this bike is. Yeah, it might be a big, power, full, fat 630 watt-hour battery bike with an 85 Newton meter motor and a steel aluminium frame, but it's a very versatile, very playful, very lively machine. And I think that's what Cotic do really, really well. Their bikes are just so much fun. And the e-bike is no different. It's a Cotic with boost. What can you not like about that? That's awesome. Now, we've already mentioned that this bike won't go on sale until 2023, and that's through no fault of anyone's really. It's just the situation that everyone finds them in. COVID, the increase in shipping costs, the increase of raw materials, and the fact that we're going through a bit of a bicycle boom at the moment just means that products can't be manufactured or shipped quick enough to get to people. If Cotic put orders in now for motors and batteries, Shimano simply can't give them until 2023 because there's such a massive line of other brands ahead of them. But that's not a bad thing. This means that Cotic can really chat with Shimano, get to know what's coming in the future, and make their bike future-proof so for whatever Shimano might have coming down the line. It also means that Sai and the guys can keep riding this bike, keep testing it, let more journalists ride it, get more bike riders to have a go on this bike, and completely tweak it to get it absolutely perfect out of the box. And that's a really important thing. How many manufacturers jumped on the e-bike bandwagon right at the start and made an absolute pig's ear of it? There's some real dogs out there in the first few years of e-bikes. And when you're a small brand, you want to get it right first time. So to see that Cotic have announced this development, but aren't putting into production anytime soon, it's actually a wise move. And it means that you guys get to put your input in, the site gets to listen to you, we get to ride it, test it, and when it finally comes out, it should be absolutely epic, and I cannot wait to see it. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this first ride impression and a few details of Cotic's prototype e-bike. If you've got any questions about Cotic's bike, please let me know in the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer those questions. If you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up and please subscribe, and also head over to my channel to see even more mountain bike related content. And as always, see you all soon, and I'll probably have another video uploaded soon as well, so goodbye.